being outside. The cold is not my friend, so you'll find me under a mango tree just getting some sun like an iguana most of the time. So that's great. And I just enjoy being around people, socializing, and having the opportunity to engage in new things.
Awesome. Kevin, you want to take us to the next? Tell us about yourself.
Yes, my name is Kevin Ortiz. I enjoy traveling. I'm a content creator, and that's just what I like to do. I do YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. So I really just enjoy making content and sharing content about my life.
Awesome. Megan?
As a job, I work in research at Metro Health Medical Center under the Spinal Cord Injury Model Systems grant. I'm also very involved in the United Spinal chapter that we have in Northeast Ohio. And then outside of all of that, I enjoy kayaking, hiking, anything outdoors when it's not snowing. It has not been a good year so far, but love getting outside when it's warmer out, especially anything by the water.
Awesome. John?
I train and compete in para-triathlon. I would like to begin studying in biomedical engineering to eventually become a prosthesis.
Karen?
So I was shot in an armed robbery 7 years ago. I am a licensed clinical social worker, so I'm a psychotherapist right now in a psychiatrist's office. But I've done a lot of advocacy work. I was Miss Wheelchair America 2019, so I got to travel. And yeah, it's not a beauty contest, it's just like a speaking thing. So.
I disagree, but keep going.
I was old when I did it, but yeah. So, but that was fun because advocating for people with disabilities is another one of my passions. And I gave birth to 3 kids after, and they're 31, 27, and 24. So, thanks.
Awesome. All right, so surprise question. What is the thing that you're most excited, that you haven't already shared, that you're most excited in your life about right now? I know a couple of you have some surprises that you should share. Let's start by this way over with Karen.
Oh, Lord. Well, I got married a year ago, and we just built a new house. But I think like getting all those adult kids together, we're going to like a big lake and renting a house in the summertime. So last year was a rough health year for me. So just like anything fun that involves my family, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's going on in Milwaukee?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll be competing at Nationals again this year, but it'll be the biggest para-triathlon event of all time. It's going to include over 200 athletes with disabilities to be competing for national titles in their respective categories. So that'll be a...
Now, I told John that I would make it up there, but Wisconsin is not that far from Libertyville, so I'm looking out at the audience at all the people in Libertyville. You will be receiving an email from me to come join me if you'd like to come cheer John on at the triathlon there. Awesome. Megan?
The thing that I'm most excited about this year is that my husband and I will be welcoming our first child. I am currently 17 weeks pregnant.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Yes, so me and my cousin, we're working on some stuff for social media right now, and I'm working with a couple companies, doing a few TV shows, hopefully, a few movies, hopefully. So yeah, I'm excited for that. So.
Oh, yeah. Eileen?
I guess it's just taking control of my independence again. Before Hollister, I had a lot of issues with UTIs and being able to like be on my own. So it's really nice to be like a year and a half already where I control my own health. So I'm looking into going back to school and maybe getting back into the workforce. It didn't seem possible before with my UTIs and like my current AD issues, but now that I'm recovering better, it just seems like it might be a different year for me. So that's a good perspective to be looking at.
Awesome. So now that we know a bit more about you, let's talk about your injury, just so everybody can kind of level set, because we have a spectrum of different people, and we talked earlier about how there's lots of levels of diversity and lots of level of injury. So Megan, do you think you could kick us off? Just tell us about the story about your injury.
I was injured in July of 2007 in a motorcycle accident. I wanted to learn how to ride, be on my own on a bike. It did not go very well. Pop the clutch, kept gassing a bike that hindsight learned was way too big for me. Ended up down a ravine. Spent 32 days in the ICU with different breathing issues, and then 6 weeks in rehab, and then just decided to keep going. So been working ever since.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. Kevin, can you share your story?
Yes. In 2012, I was a young airman in the United States Air Force. I was fresh off a deployment, and I did not know what mental health was. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I didn't know how to ask for help. Again, I was fresh off a deployment from Afghanistan. And on September 27, 2012, I shot myself in the chest, resulting in me being paralyzed from the waist down. So I'm a T10, T11 complete paraplegic.
Thank you, Kevin. Eileen.
I had a shallow water diving accident in 2019. July as well. I was with a couple friends. We had chartered a boat. We had spent the morning just diving off the boat, everything normal. In the end, in the afternoon, right before we left, I went into the water and dove one more time. When I tried to submerge, I just couldn't feel the rest of my body. At that moment, I kind of noticed that something was off, so I just told myself, relax, hold your oxygen. You don't know if anybody noticed that you jumped, and get it together. Luckily, I was with really good friends, and my brother was there with me as well. So he was able to help me get out of the water. After that, it was just the rehab center at Jackson, working with wonderful people there that helped me get to know my new body, my new life. And from there on, we've just been learning and pushing forward.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Karen?
Yeah, so mine was, I'm the oldest one up here. I was shot in the back when I was in 1987. My boyfriend and I had gone to an LSU football game, and we're trying to go to a blues place where he was going to play guitar, and we were in the parking lot, and we didn't know there were kids hiding, snuck up from behind me with a gun, hit me over the head, took my purse with my $2 in it, and then shot me in the back point blank, which left me with a T10 complete spinal cord injury, but a punctured lung. I lost a lot of blood, so I was lucky to make it to the hospital. And then recently, I have a new bladder. Since the last time I saw y'all, I got bladder cancer diagnosed in 21, October. Probably, due to the materials catheters used to be made out of, repeat UTIs, all that kind of stuff makes us more prone to bladder cancer. Fought it for a couple of years, and then finally they said, none of the treatments had worked, so we took it out and made a new one out of my intestines, and then several surgeries later, I ended up with what they call an Indiana pouch. Some of you might be familiar. So I now cath through my belly button, so I've had to change all my products and use Navigator and all the helpful people at Hollister and ABC to help me kind of navigate the new products I needed for flushing and that kind of thing. So.
Thank you. John?
Coming up on 2 years ago this weekend, I had a traumatic spinal cord injury due to I used to ride a motorcycle, and I was on my way to work, and someone ran a stop sign and hit me, which caused me to break 4 vertebrae and have a T4 complete spinal cord injury. And I actually spent my time at Lynn Rehab Center, where Rachel was my OT for a certain amount of time. So I had very good help with OT, PTs, and even with recreational therapists.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. I know it's tough to be vulnerable in front of an audience here, but you got a lot of support and champions out here with you. So talk to us a little bit about where intermittent catheterization was introduced to you. So after your injury, was it at the rehab? Was it post-rehab? Kevin, can you get us started with that?
Yes, so let me see. It was about, I would say a month after my injury. They brought in this container, and the container had gloves, lubricant, everything that you needed, and that was how I first learned how to cath. And it wasn't you put the catheter in, and then you cath inside this container, and that was the very first time I learned. and it was not a fun experience having to learn how to, use a catheter. But that was the first time that I was introduced to catheter.
Got it. Eileen?
Yeah, I believe it was when I was in the rehab. I don't self-cath. My family does for me, my sister and my mother. I also have a CNA who helps with that. So when we were in rehab, they kind of just got our family together and told us this is how it's going to go from here on out. I mean, it's a weird experience. I worked as a special needs teacher before the accident, and I had heard about catheterizing and the process of nursing, but I never thought I would have to come across it unless I had a student who needed it. So when I was in the rehab and they told me about these things, it was just like a whole different world. I spent some time on a Foley, so I just always assumed I was gonna have to be in a Foley. But then they started to tell me how like my bladder doesn't work the same way and I'm gonna have to start a system. So then my family had to learn how to do it so that they could actually help me once we went home. Because unfortunately they're not going to provide round care services for nursing to do so. And our main objective was for me to stay at home with my family, so we got it together, we built the system, and we did it. I forgot to mention earlier, I'm a C3, C4 quadriplegic, so when it comes to catheterizing, I'm always assisted for it. So it wasn't so much about me learning about it, but the people who were going to care for me to learn how to go through the process and pay attention to any detail to make sure it's safe while they're doing it.
Karen?
Same, inpatient rehab within, let's see, I was there for like 5 weeks. Luckily, I didn't have any upper body impairment, so, just kind of figuring it out. It wasn't pretty at first. It's hard. You feel like it takes way too long, and then eventually you get so fast that I feel like I didn't share with most of my coworkers and friends that I did cath. I just went into the stall. I think they just assumed I pee normally, and because you get really fast and they don't even know that you've gone in there to cath. So.
John, what was intermittent catheterization introduced for you?
Yeah, so when I was in the ICU, as soon as my Foley was removed after surgery, a few days later, the nurses came in and started to cath me, and I was pretty curious on what was going on. So I constantly would ask questions when I was an inpatient, outpatient, didn't matter. So I was asking the nurses what was going on, but then it wasn't until about a week later that I was in inpatient that my OTs started to teach me about it, and I was introduced to many different catheters until I started with the Vapro Plus Pocket.
Got it. Megan?
Similar story. I was doing inpatient rehab. I think it was a couple of weeks before I was set to discharge. I started doing it for myself. Started in bed with a mirror and have progressed from there. And like Karen said, you get pretty quick at it. It's, just like a normal thing anymore. And I think I forgot to mention my injury level earlier, but I'm also a T4 complete.
So in a couple words, can you just describe when IC was first introduced to you, what were the first words that came to mind or first thoughts that came to mind? John, you're smiling at me, so I'm going to start with you.
Like WTF, that was the first thing, especially as like a male, so like we spoke about that earlier too.
What about it made you say, what the?
Just having like a foreign object inserted into, your urethra.
Karen, can you share?
For females, it's finding your urethra. First, something you don't have to do before. So yeah, like having mirrors and all of these things, and then trying to figure out positioning of your pelvis. So I wanted to go back to school as soon as I could. So I wanted to be independent. I wanted to learn how to drive. I didn't want people helping me. And so yeah, I was determined to do it. But yeah, it's pretty weird. And also, there were no choices in 1987. I think we had red rubber or red rubber. That was pretty much your options then.
Got it. Megan, what about you?
Pretty similar to Karen is, I have to look at myself. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this, but I am quite stubborn and persistent, so I'm just, all right, let me just do it.
Got it. Kevin?
For me, it was whoa. it was whoa. So I guess just having to come to grips with, this is going to be my new normal now. I believe like that was the biggest challenge. It was just like, whoa, I have to use this thing, and yeah, that was it. Whoa.
Got it. Eileen?
I guess for me, it was just, are they gonna find it? So it was like when I was in rehab, for some reason the nurses had a hard time finding my urethra. And there was like this one experience where it almost felt like a sitcom. It was like one nurse came in and she couldn't do it, so they're like the next nurse, and then the next nurse, and then they would get another catheter, and then another catheter, and I'm like, so what's going on? And it happened to me a few times at the beginning where there was just like one specific nurse that would get it like quickly and in it. So then it came to me like, is my family gonna be able to do it? Like my mom is older, is it gonna be more difficult for her? Or am I gonna be able to find a nurse that's gonna be able to do it? I mean, even the first time that the nurse came to the house, my mother literally had to drive home from work because like she couldn't find it. And I was like, what's going on? Why can't they find it? But besides that, I think it's the scheduling as well. When you have to start catheterizing, your life revolves around a schedule. Whether you cath every 4 hours or every 6 hours, that's how you live. You have to cater to those time frame. In 4 hours, I need to make sure I eat, or I need to make sure I find a bathroom in my case, or somewhere, and sometimes like the bathrooms aren't as accessible as you would want them to be, right? So you have to find spots that work for you. Like, not gonna lie, I hope Old Navy's not listening, but Old Navy's a great spot to go cat. You literally find an accessible fitting room and you go in there and, Old Navy must think, I buy 1,000 items. And I do, man, I buy your jeans, I swear. But it becomes a situation where you find the best spot that works for you. And it took us almost a year. For a while, we used to like go to the bathroom and it was like the sink is dirty. You can't hang your bag to get your things out of the way. On top of that, it's me, my mom, and my sister. Like, how much more space can there be, right? So it's a lot of factors. So when you find a spot that works for you, then you kind of have an instant relief. My life is a little bit more normal because I know if Old Navy's around, I'm gonna be fine,
I will never walk into an Old Navy the same way again. So a little bit of contrast. We talked about feelings and a couple words of when you first were introduced to intermittent catheterization. When you think of intermittent catheterization today, what words come to mind? Let's start with John again.
I guess just like it's a necessity and ease, especially with the new technology. Yeah.
Awesome. Megan?
Easy peasy, let's go do it.
All right. Kevin?
Every 4 to 5 hours.
Okay. Can you unpackage that for everybody? Can you unpackage that for everybody? Why every 4 to 5 hours? What's the importance in your mind for that?
Because that's what works for me. So that's what works for my bladder. I know people that cath every 2 hours, but for me, it's every 4 to 5 hours. So, like she said, you gotta find somewhere to cath. It has to be big enough for your chair to fit, and you find those spots. Like she said, like Old Navy, like you find spots that work for you, and that's what you stick with. So
perfect.
Just like certain hotels, like that's the one that works for me. Perfect on the accessibility, everything, the shower chair, everything. So.
Awesome. Eileen?
I guess I would say like where was Hollister 6 years ago for me at least. I think my family had a hard time with the catheters. I remember my mother for a while, they gave us a brand that we went home with, and then we couldn't get it through the medical suppliers, and like she just like boycotted any other catheter, but it was just simpler for her. And once we came across these catheters, it's like it doesn't matter how old the person is or where they come from or what they've been doing, like they're just so simple that like, you could even try the neighbor to give you a hand if you need. So just for me right now is just finding the right product has changed it completely for me.
Karen?
I think, thank God for hydrophilic and closed systems, because the technology is like so much improved. So, because before you had to you're in a bathroom, you're trying to handle, lubricant is separate from the catheter and you have to lubricate the catheter, but you can't touch the catheter where it's gonna be inserted. And you're you have a mirror, and I was scooting forward and navigating clothing, I did it, but now it's open the thing, pop it off, and it goes in, and then you can, with the closed system, just, your car. if you have to, like, whatever. So that makes life much easier.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit. We talked about ICs. So let's talk a little bit about Hollister. So I want to just ask the question to everybody: where were you first introduced to Hollister as a company, as a product? Eileen, can we start with you?
Of course. With me, it was with Rachel. I mean, I feel like we all give Rachel credit. But
Who's Rachel?
Rachel.
Oh, Rachel Boucher over there. All right.
Rachel was a part of my team in the rehab. She was one of my OTs as well. And she was also like a source. Whenever I needed information, I kind of always knew I could go to her. So there was this one time where I was leaving the Lynn Rehab Center, and I was having difficulty finding the particular brand of catheters that I wanted. Ironically, I'm getting into my van, and Rachel's coming out of the building, and I'm like, this might be someone who could help me out. So I told her, I was like, hey, look, I'm having this trouble with the catheters. I don't know if maybe you know someone or you could help me. She asked me about the brand, and I told her, like, they're not that great, but it's what I've always done, what I've used, so I'm going to stick to it. And that's when she made the recommendation for Hollister. I mean, she gave me some free samples. And at first, I was like, okay, I mean, I don't know if it's going to work for me, but just the fact that my mother was able to do it instantly was like a huge, like, this is going to work. Because you, again, don't know who you're going to need to cut, so it's a situation where it has to be easy for everyone. And then after that, it was just like, hey, Rachel, can I get some more? Hey, Rachel, can I get some more? And then she was just so awesome about connecting me with the right medical supplier and informing me as far as like what my rights were, because I had a lot of resistance with medical suppliers where they're like not particularly wanting to give me a brand unless the doctor specified it, and I had to have like a history of it, and that's when like she advocated and told me like that's not the situation, this is what you could do. So if it not be for Rachel, I probably would still be using some brand that's not the best for me.
Awesome. Kevin?
Yes, so one of my best friends, his name is Anthony Sanchez, aka Wheelchair Poppy, online if you guys don't know. So he gave me some of his Baypro Plus Pocket, and I started using those. And then from there, I would go on the website and request samples all the time. Yes, I would request samples all the time. And being a content creator, you always think about making content. So this one particular day, I was like, you know what? I gotta make a video on this thing. So I made a video talking about the catheter, and Rachel reached out to me, and that's how I'm up here right now. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Megan?
For me, it was through my involvement with United Spinal and Mark Bowers. He's been around our chapter for as long as I've been a part of it. Huge supporter of us. I am a huge fan of his. But he would come to our monthly meetings and talk about the products. Vapro Plus Pocket was probably the first one that I started using. Really loved it, that I could go anywhere. I don't have to worry about if the bathroom's accessible because I know I can go anywhere with it, especially out kayaking or hiking. There's not usually bathrooms around. And I do have to go like every couple of hours, especially now drinking a ton of water. So that was probably my first involvement, and then I was introduced to the Infina Chic and loved that for home use as well.
Awesome. Let's also give it up for Mark Bowers.
Mark Bowers.
All right, John?
So for me, a few weeks into inpatient, actually Alfredo came and did a presentation at Lynn Rehab. And I had a problem because I had so much trauma in the ICU that I actually needed to completely lay down in order to insert the catheter, and then I had to like sit up for it to, withdraw. And then, so I was trying all these different catheters, and I actually used it that day, but it didn't work for me that day. So I ended up kind of finding one that worked for me okay, but it led to me getting a lot of UTIs. So then later on when I was in outpatient, Rachel showed me the catheter again, and I was like, okay, I'll try it again. And so since then, I've had one UTI in the last 18 months. So
Let's give it up for Alfredo. Karen?
So it was either
abilities expos through Miss Wheelchair America or United Spinal, because I was on the board for the Louisiana chapter forever, and I'm on the Tennessee board. So it was either a Hollister table at the United Spinal thing or Abilities Expo, I'm not quite sure. But, and then I worked for New Motion for years, and 1 year I was in med supply. So I got really familiar with all the products, and I think probably the first thing I looked for was like, what are the catheters made of? Just making sure there was no DHP in them. So that was a big concern for me after I kind of figured all that out. And then obviously like how smoothly it goes in and out, and not having to have like a separate packet of lubricant, I think was big for me. But it was one of those things, one of those spinal cord things.
Were you getting some feedback? Okay. Thank you. Awesome. So we talked about how you met Hollister and how you got introduced to Hollister products. Can you talk to us a little bit about when you were first injured, today, however you want to look at it, but talk to us a little bit about the process you go through to get your products to your home. So either the DME or other supplier that you use to get those products. Can you just share, I don't want you to share who you use, but just what was that process like when you transitioned from, okay, this is now my new normal, I'm going to have to get these every 30 to 90 days. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that process, how it looks, and maybe how it changed since your original injury? So, Karen, can we start with you?
That was a million years ago. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I guess they were shipped to my house then too. I don't think that they were like, not sure if I had to speak with them every month, like to call to let them know. I know, I mean, somebody mentioned that I had said this last year, but we only got 30 a month, and I had to boil and dry and then put them in plastic bags and reuse them, which obviously led to a bunch of UTIs. So that's different. Like I actually get the number that I need now. And then I just recently was able to switch to a 90-day supply, which is obviously huge. It looks like Christmas. There's a lot of boxes, but that's nice to not have to I hate to say that I don't want to have contact with them every month, but it's the same.
And I know you went through some stuff recently where you had some DME supply issues. Can you just talk with the group a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. So I did switch companies. I won't say from who to who, but because you told me not to. But let's see. So because of the new bladder situation, when your bladder's made out of intestines, your intestines produce mucus. So I have to do a flush twice a day. So I have to flush and make saline. It's a whole thing. So you can't have a closed system to do the flush. So I also, because of the new urethra channel that they made, it's kind of windy. So they sent me home from the hospital, first of all, with not enough catheters to do the flushing with. And then they sent me with some that were way too rigid to navigate the canal. And so I think I did reach out to Spencer because I was about to cry. I would try to put the catheter in and it wouldn't bend through the channel, and then there was blood, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. And so I was emergency calling, saying I need, and then I think I was trying to get red rubber just because I didn't know what else could navigate this new channel without hurting me. And they're like, we can't get you that. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, so I sampled quite a few things. I called, they sent me a bunch of samples, and I was able to figure out. So I just use the regular Vapro. It's, bendable enough to get through that channel without hurting, and it's obviously well lubricated. And I just got the new shipment, has the new technology, and I do really like it. I could feel the glycerin a little. Actually, the first time I put it in, it slipped out. I was like, whoa, that's slipperier than the other one was. But so now I do 1/3 of my shipment is not a closed system, and then the other 2/3 are closed, so that when I'm at work and everywhere else, I can use the closed system. So it was rough navigating that new thing, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing about that. John, can you tell us a little bit about how you get your supplies and that experience?
Yeah, so initially I had it from a big company. A big company was supplying for me for the first year, but then I had a change in insurance, so they no longer were able to cover through my insurance. So then someone that I actually met, a friend of mine, he is a DME. So now I get my supplies through him.
Got it. Megan?
The beginning of my injury, it was a phone call every month, I believe. I don't think I had much of a choice in what catheters I was using, whatever insurance covered. I know for the most part that I've been lucky enough to be able to use closed systems for the most part of my injury. And then about 7 years ago, I changed careers, changed insurances, had to get set up with a different DME provider. That setup process was very frustrating. There were many months that I would get shipments late, would be at risk of running out. I believe I called Mark a couple different times just to help me get through that. But now that everything's all set up and running, I get an email every month. I can customize how many catheters I want or need. I get a couple catheters every month, and it's been pretty easy.
Awesome. Kevin?
Yes, so I go through the VA. So pretty much they have an app for the My Healthy Vet, and all I have to do is just go on the app and request what I need and submit the refills, and that's it.
So I'm going to probe that a little deeper. So Wheelchair Poppy, am I getting that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he introduced you to Vapro.
Yes.
So when you went onto the VA, did they have Vapro?
Yes. So I was using another brand of catheter, and I didn't look for any other type of catheter because it was one of those things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for the past like 10 years, 12 years, I've been using the same catheter. And then once he introduced me to that one, it was a complete game changer after that. And I was like, I need this. So I contacted the VA. Rachel told me to check to see if the VA offered it. And I contacted the VA, and they said that is on the list, and I got it switched over, and it was at the house within 5 days. So I've been on there ever since.
Awesome.
Yes.
Eileen?
Yeah, at the beginning, since I didn't really know I had an option in catheters, their insurance kind of just took over and they would ship it. I also started off on Medicaid, so it was kind of like they did everything for me, and it was a lot easier. Once I got my Medicare checked in, it became a more difficult situation just because the Medicare changes often, right? So you don't stay with the same insurance, and then sometimes you have to make sacrifices, whether you want the supply you need or the doctor you need. So I'm actually going through that now. I had to switch insurances because my primary was no longer taking the insurance that I had last year, and I didn't want to lose the primary because finding a good primary is very difficult, especially with how much we need help with. So I actually have been searching for a new medical supplier that is in network with my doctor and my insurance so that I could keep both, right? So what I've noticed the difference is now that I know what I need, it's a little more difficult because there's a lot of resistance with Medicare and Medicaid to pay for what I need. And they give me a lot of backlash where they're like, prove it. Let me get doctor's notes, let me get things. So I'm at the point where I have to choose between the catheters I need or a doctor that's gonna be there when I need them to be. So right now, I'm basically thinking that it might be better to stay with catheters or be better to be with a doctor. So the difference between the beginning and now is now that I know what I need, I'm gonna have to fight a lot more to keep what I need.
Thank you for sharing that. Want to talk a little bit more about Hollister products, and I know, so if you could just quickly share what product you use, and then I don't like to be presumptuous to think that it made an impact on your life, but if it has, would you mind sharing, what impact it's had in just your quality of life, what it's allowed you to do? Why don't we start with you, Karen?
So the Vapro Pocket and the Vapro, is it Pocket Plus or?
Plus Pocket.
Plus Pocket. We were talking about that earlier. But so that time when, especially with the new bladder situation and the new cathing, I ended up, because of the problem of them not sending me the right catheters home and not being able to flush, I ended up in ICU on 15 days of IV antibiotics from not having the right supplies. I had just gone back to work after surgery, literally 2.5 days. It was Halloween, and I started running 102.7 temperature and was in ICU by the next day. So the difference, I think I said that it's a little dramatic, but I mean, it could be the difference between life and death, because the infection now, because of where my bladder is, it's so much closer to my kidneys that I can go septic really fast. So knowing that I have all these extra protections in place, which is why I'm here today, because I think it does change people's lives, and I feel much more secure about, I want to be around. I'd like to be a grandmother. I'm not ready to, go anywhere yet. So.
The trajectory is looking good with your
Yeah,
son
it
getting
is, it
engaged. All right. John?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started cathing, I tried a ton of different catheters, and I said in the other room, within the first 2 months, I believe, I had like 4 or 5 UTIs, and it was just constant. I was just bedridden all the time. At that time, I was, trying to improve, but I couldn't do that because I was just sick all the time, trying to learn how to drive. At the time, I even needed to climb up steps. Like I had to floor transfer and climb up steps every day just to get in my house, because I had to learn that in inpatient before I was even allowed to go home. So just doing anything at all sucked because I was just so sick all the time. And like I had mentioned earlier, you don't just get a UTI and then you get on antibiotics and a couple days later you're fine. You have to, okay, I feel sick. Do I have a UTI? Okay, maybe I do. Schedule the appointment, get there, do the test. They'll give you an antibiotic that might work, wait for the culture, then you might switch to the antibiotic, then it's 10 days, so it's like a 2-week, maybe even 3-week long process of just being sick. And so that was just constant. And then once I actually changed to the Vapro Plus Pocket, everything changed. I mean, that was like not even a thought anymore that, I might get sick. Now, if I feel sick at all, I just chug down like vitamin C or something, or water and sweat a lot. So it's really changed.
Awesome. Megan?
Similar story. As soon as I switched, I rarely had a UTI anymore. If I had one a year, that was something. Since pregnancy, it's been a little bit different with that, but I don't have to worry about where I go to the bathroom. I don't have to worry about UTIs all the time. And it just relieved a lot of anxiety for me to be out in the community and do what I want to do.
Awesome. Kevin?
Yes, I use the Vapro Plus Pocket. I feel like it should be called the Pocket Plus.
Noted.
But I've been fortunate enough to never have to really worry too much about like UTIs. But the Vapro Plus Pocket has really been a game changer as far as like the time that I'm in there. 'Cause, normally they take like 5 to 6 minutes, and you gotta carry around, all these supplies, gloves, lubricant, all this stuff, and it really does take a toll sometimes. So, when I got that first shipment, it really did feel like Christmas. It really did. So it's really been a game changer ever since. So thank you.
Eileen?
I guess I would say quality of life. Before the Vapor Plus Pocket, I was consistently with UTIs. Like it was more the time I had UTIs and the time I felt well. And it's like John mentioned, when you get a UTI, it like sucks the life out of you. And before the Vapro Plus Pocket, I literally could feel the lack of energy I had. My automatic dysreflexia was like 10 times worse. Like we all get automatic dysreflexia, but I recently noticed that when I get a UTI now, it's like acceptable. Like I don't feel like I want to fight my own body. It's not as severe. Where before, like I couldn't even leave the house because of everything that came with the UTI, the fatigue, the nausea, and then on top of that, like having to deal with, is there going to be a bathroom that's going to work for me in order for me to cath in time to not feel worse? And then something that Kevin mentioned is like the packaging of the Vapro Plus Pocket. I remember telling Rachel, like, it's so sleek, it's so sexy. Like, you don't feel like a patient, when you used to go with these other catheters, it was like, hide the bag, cover it. Oh my God, they're gonna know. Now you walk around with a Vapor Plus pocket and they probably think it's like an oversized condom or like something like that, you know? And it gives you back like, it really does. It gives you back that like privacy. You feel like a person, not a patient anymore. And like you get like a little less embarrassed. You feel more cool. Like, all right, I could carry this in my pocket and I'm not just like a sick person. They'll never know what it is.
Like if we are on antibiotics, then like your stomach's like messed up forever, and like my stomach now is like really sensitive too, and then you have to worry about yeast infection, like that. The whole thing is just a nightmare.
It's like a cascade effect.
It's bad. It's not good.
Awesome. All right, so last question before I go to the moderated questions. You got a large room in here. You've got some of the biggest leaders at Hollister, JDS, ABC Medical. And we're being filmed, so I'm sure our associates from around the world will eventually see this. One word, or what one thing would you say to Hollister associates around the world? What one thing do you want to impart to all the people around the world? Eileen, do you think you can kick us off?
You guys have knowledge that a lot of people don't have. I mean, just sitting here, we learned about the tip of these catheters. We learned about how the bacteria travels. Even us that we live with UTIs, we don't even go that thorough into the information of what's happening to ourselves. At least for me, sometimes I don't like to read too much in the internet because then you think you're dying from everything, right? So it's good for you guys to know that the knowledge you have is important, especially for us. By letting us know what your product does, it helps us get healthier lives. You know, just understand how we can fight UTIs and not live in this chronic pain. And you're a huge resource for us. Even though you're in sales, that's not necessarily what you're offering us. It's the information, the value of your product for us to have better lives.
Awesome. Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you. Yes, so being a grown-up, getting that excitement like how it was like on Christmas Day when you was a kid, like you truly get that feeling. Like I truly got that feeling once I changed to the Vapro Plus pocket. Once I finally got that new shipment in, I truly like, I can't even describe it. Like yeah, it really did feel like Christmas Day. Like just changing over to the catheter, it truly just felt amazing. So I just want to say thank you all, because you don't know how it feels on us end users, you know, to receive this product. And like she said, it's sexy. All right, like, you know, you carrying around, like I probably carry around probably like 5 on me. I probably got like 5 on me right now. So and you would never know. So I love it. Thank you.
Awesome. Megan?
I probably said something similar to this last year at TASM, but keep doing what you're doing, keep innovating, keep improving. I have never worked with a company that I've truly felt is end user focused. And I feel that way with Hollister and ABC Medical. And it comes across that you do truly care about your end users. And as an end user, I really appreciate that. It makes me feel seen, and just keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
All right, John?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of the innovation side. You know, it's obviously a lot of you have seen different people who suffer with spinal cord injury or whatever it may be, and you pretty much know it's not general what people's needs are. So just innovation. I mean, like when I first tried the Vapro Plus Pocket, I thought that it was perfect, you know? And then as soon as I got the Hydra Balance, it was like, whoa, that one sucked. No. You know? But it's just that, like, when you get a new toy, you know, it's like, you know, it's great. You know, you don't realize how good it is, or how, I shouldn't say how bad it was until you had something so great, you know? But it's always gonna improve, and yeah, just continuing to improve and asking the questions to the end users, the people who actually use it, and yeah.
Yeah. Nobody thought CD players were not cool until they got the iPod, so we'll use that analogy. Karen?
Yeah, I agree with the fact that I thought there was nothing wrong with it before. It is better, which is great. Thank you, and then thank you for the extra help. It's like the products are great, but like Ross was my guy, like in Louisiana. What's Ross's last name? Thompson, that's what I thought. Ross was great, so I loved him anyway. But when I call to get samples, or like even when I had the bladder change, I talked to probably 3 different people, and I got to talk to some of the nurses, and I wanted like a cover, like an ostomy cover. So things that maybe Hollister doesn't even carry, y'all were willing to help me go like the extra mile to like figure out my new body, and it does make us feel cared for. And there are not very many companies like corporate America that you feel like that you can say that about. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay, we have 35 questions, so we're not going to get through them all, but thank you for the audience for engaging and sending all those questions in. I'm going to start going through some of those questions. So we're going to start off a little simple. How do you prepare for traveling? Megan, can you start us off?
I overpack catheters like crazy. I'm always afraid of running out. I don't really know how many times I go in a day. So I overpack. But as far as like the actual travel, until right now, I would dehydrate myself so I wouldn't have to go while traveling, or would go a lot less while traveling. And now I've got my system down. I don't have to do that. I don't have to jeopardize my health in order to travel, like I know so many wheelchair users have to do, but I attribute that to the Vapro Plus Pocket, where I can go anywhere, and it's very discreet, and nobody knows that I'm going. Yeah, so I just always make sure that I have plenty with me, and just kind of plan when I go.
Mm-hmm. Any other stories of what you do to prepare to travel?
All about the same.
All about the same? Eileen, how about you?
I make a checklist. I mean, it takes a lot to travel, especially when you're cold all the time. I want to make sure I have my mini house with me, so it's like the heater, the catheters, and then I come across acronyms. Like right before we left, my sister and I came, I think it was CRC, so it was like charger for the chair, ramp, because you never know when you're going to need a ramp, right? And then catheters, because the catheters are like probably the first C. If you can't pee, what are you going to do, right? So usually when we travel, we'll take double the catheters, like Megan mentioned, and we'll split them, because I always have like that horror in my mind that we're going to lose a bag or it's going to stay behind. So I'll have half of them in one bag and then the other one somewhere else to access them. But really, it's just organization for us, having a list and making sure we're checking it twice, so everything we need is with us.
Awesome. So within the room, we have folks on our service side who have more direct interaction with patients. And we have a lot of new folks on that team, but also people who have been here for a very, very long time. One of the questions is, what advice would you give to folks who are interacting with people with spinal cord injuries, who need to intermittent catheterize? Like, what advice would you have with our sales reps who are interacting with them directly?
Call us wheelchair users, not, like, don't ever say, can I say this? Like, wheelchair bound.
Got it?
Just in case. Like, I don't think you would, but I'm just saying, don't.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, someone said that I was like wheelchair bound, and it's like, oh, well, you want to see me without it? Like, it'd be very different, you know? And it's more like it frees a lot of us, you know?
Yeah, the language is important.
So language is important. Any other advice?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Sometimes we might not know what we need and you might know. And it sounds weird, but that's a lot of like what you guys learn in these seminars and what you do. So for me, it's like if you're not sure on how I cath or what my life is like, don't be afraid to ask. I mean, I know it seems a little personal and it's all about how you ask because, you know, there has to be that line of respect always. But we need you to ask the right questions in order for us to give you the right information.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, don't assume things. Like, just don't assume that we do things in a particular way. Always ask the questions.
Okay, awesome. When you were new to cathing, did you ever feel pain when cathing, and what was the reason? John,
Yeah.
you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I have nerve pain, which is constant. So it's mainly in my feet, but I was talking earlier about it that when you think about it, right, the more you think about it, the worse pain I have. That's why I train a lot, because when I'm training, I don't think about it at all. So when I was cathing, even still now, when I'm cathing, I think it's more neurological than anything. So yeah, I think it's actually from switching the tip is now smaller than before. I actually experience less nerve pain because it's like more like peace of mind, like, oh, it's not that bad as, you know. So I don't believe that I've ever had any actual pain from it, unless if from it like tugging, like from the micro tears. But I think it's more neurological.
Did anybody else ever experience pain in their cathing process?
More like pressure or resistance, and so like, and I'm very mindful of that. Like when I was pregnant with one of my kids, baby like was sitting really low on my bladder, and so I was like really careful. I ended up with like a urethral diverticulum actually, because I don't have full sensation. I think like I caused a tear trying to push the catheter in too hard. So it's, the problem is really more lack of sensation than actual pain. Pain would be good.
Yeah. So the lack of sensation
Is the
leads to
problem.
outcomes that you would have maybe avoided if you,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I did want to say that. It seems like with the hydro balance, it seems like it's almost impossible to make, like to create a micro tear. And if there was a way to conduct like a study on that, I think that would help a lot. Especially for me, like I said, like the peace of mind, like, oh, it doesn't really matter, like because sometimes there is some resistance when inserting, but the way that hydrophilic catheters feels like it's not going to create any sort of micro tears.
Yeah. Awesome. Another simpler question, but a good one. How many times a day do each of you cath? So some of you have mentioned it. Kevin did. So I'm going to skip over you, Kevin, since you already covered. Oh, you got more?
It does go up. So I normally cath between 4 to 5 hours a day, but depending on how I'm working out, pre-workout, all that type of stuff, water intake, it could be more. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Eileen?
A more religious schedule just because I can cath myself, so I'm always coordinating. I started off every 6 hours, but recently I've realized that it's better for me to do it every 4 hours just because I maintain myself a lot better as far as like retaining liquid in my body and stuff like that. So at least for me, I'm living on a every 4 hour cycle. Like Kevin mentioned, sometimes I could stretch it. I didn't find Old Navy in time. I'm far away from home. I don't necessarily want to use the stalls that are available. So I can stretch it to about an hour more, but I try to be consistent to avoid UTIs.
Karen?
So my new bladder is like a baby bladder. So it's like, and it does stretch over time, but so I was only holding like 100 milliliters like at first. I think now I'm, which I do like about the closed system, I know how much urine like I'm holding so I can measure. So it's like 200 now, but I can't go much longer. I'm a therapist, and so in between, almost in between every session right now, or I'm lucky if I can make it through 2 patients that I don't have to go to the bathroom and cath. And then I have to wake up at night, and I set an alarm at this point for like every 3 hours or so. So hopefully that's not for the rest of my life, but it is now.
Yeah. John?
So I have autonomic dysreflexia as well, so I am woken up by when I need to cath. So it really depends on like how much water I drink and things like that. And right now my insurance only covers $186 a month. So it's about 6 to 7 times per day. But usually I'm cathing anywhere between 10 to 12. So I find myself asking people for catheters or kind of, or a lot of samples and things like that. So it depends. It depends on the day, depends on everything like that. I'm not really on a schedule, even though closer to 12 o'clock, I probably, between the hours of 9 a.m. to 12, it's probably like 4 times total. But then throughout the day, it kind of extends to 4, 5, 6 hours sometimes. So,
Megan?
I'm pretty similar to John. I use mild symptoms of AD to let me know when I need to go. I would say like 8-ish to 10 times a day. And lately it's been a couple of times during the night as well.
Awesome.
Oh, great.
Going on to, first I'm just going to ask kind of a yes or no question. Do you share your experience with catheterization with peers, other people with spinal cord injury in wheelchairs? Oh, so that's a unanimous yes. Okay, excellent. So what is the most inspirational thing that you would say to somebody who is beginning their journey with a spinal cord injury? If you were to talk to them, or when you talk to them. Kevin, can I start with you?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's inspirational, but what I tell them each and every time. So if somebody asks me what's the biggest thing that you could tell me, I would say go to physical therapy. Stick with it, because everything that I learned in physical therapy, I use on a daily basis. So I would just say stick with your physical therapy. And yeah.
Eileen?
I guess for me is you're going to find your system. So, I've been in the chair for 6 years. Where I'm at right now is nowhere near where we were at the beginning. And everyone kind of has to get to know their new body before they can decide what their life is kind of going to be with. So one huge thing that I would tell them is just don't get frustrated. You're going to find your system. You're going to find what works for you. And once you get a system, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with. Like, the bag you travel with, how often you cath, getting to know your body. Like everybody mentioned, automatic dysreflexia is huge at letting you know what's going on. But on top of that, when something's going on after a certain amount of time. At the beginning, I didn't know what they were doing to me. Now I can feel something and I'll be like, okay, UTI is coming, or I'm getting sick, or I need to go cath, or like something's bothering me. So just having that patience to go through the time needed to build the system you need, you'll find it'll work for you.
Awesome. Karen?
Yeah, I would say that that it gets easier. Like everything is just so hard in the beginning, like transferring and getting in and out of your car and you're just so tired and you're like, and people think, not walking is like the biggest deal, but then we didn't even talk about bowel protocol. There's bladder and bowel and all these other things that people don't see that we have to do. But it all gets easier and life does get good again.
John?
yeah, so I'm the newly injured here. Like I said, I'm coming up on 2 years of having a spinal cord injury. So I would say, I didn't really think this way, which is legit, until I started with the Vapro Plus Pocket. I didn't need to be a new person anymore. Like, I could still be the same person, same competitive person, and still do the same things that I liked and do everything before, It just might look different or sound different or whatever it may be.
Thank you for sharing that. Megan?
Pretty similar to what others have said. Everything at the beginning is a lot harder. It's new. You're uncertain about it. Try not to get frustrated. Give yourself grace. Practice patience. The more you practice, the easier it gets. And after time, it's just like any old thing that you're used to doing. It's normal, it's easy, and it gets quicker.
Awesome. So we've talked a little bit about how you get your catheters and things like that, and we've talked a couple of you have shared where access to those catheters has changed in your life. I know, Karen, you shared that because of you had access. Eileen, you're talking about some current challenges you had. What changes, if you were to write the rules, what changes would you all make, or how would you write the rules for access to intermittent catheterizers? Megan, I'm going to start with you because
No catheter limits. Everybody needs different amounts. Insurance should not be depicting how often I get to pee every month. Especially now being pregnant, I have to drink so much water that I feel like it's another full-time job. And I'm starting to wonder if that's going to be an issue the further I go in my pregnancy journey. Will insurance start denying me all of the catheters that I need? I don't want to reuse catheters, obviously, and it's kind of a worry. So I think that's my biggest.
Yeah. Kevin, any thoughts from your perspective?
No, I think Megan hit it right on the head. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Eileen, anything from your perspective?
I mean, I think it's similar to what Megan was saying, but I also feel like insurances need to be a little more progressive. I mean, technology has changed over time with these catheters, but it seems like insurance keeps on taking 10 steps backwards as far as how accessible they are and who they work with. So at least on my end, it would just be like being a little more progressive as far as the amount of catheters were provided and all these rules that they have behind, or they're in network, but they don't take your insurance because it's a supplementary insurance. Just a lot of stuff that it's kind of like, all right, let's talk about what the patient needs and let's get them what they need, not just keep on giving us all this backlash to fight us on it.
Awesome. Karen?
Well, having to get sick twice to get the kind of catheter that you need is ridiculous. We're going to get infections if we don't have the proper type of catheter. I mean, we may get them anyway when you're first learning how to cath. So, but yeah, having to wait for something like that is kind of crazy to me.
We would agree.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to add from there.
Okay.
It's about.
Excellent. So we're getting close to our time here. So first of all, I'm going to end with one question, and it's going to be very, very simple here. But I think it'll be, if you could just all share one thing that inspires you in your everyday, that maybe we can take away that inspires us to go play to win in 2025. Root you, just something that inspires you. I'll give you a minute to think about it. But when you're ready, just smile at me. Okay, Karen, we'll start off with you.
I think so. Megan talked about United Spinal Association, but I think like when wheelchair users, like all of us band together, which I was going to say too about new users, is like find a group of wheelchair users like in your community. But I think what we can do together to change rules, to change the laws, to meet with legislators, to get air carrier access law, to get insurance regulations for other types of exercise equipment that would keep us healthy. I think we can do sort of amazing things, and we've shown that with some of the airlines and things that have changed lately. So I think my community of wheelchair users inspires me.
Awesome. John, can you share?
The biggest thing that inspires me is my faith. Just knowing that I am saved.
Thank you. Megan?
I agree with Karen. It's hearing other people's stories inspires me. Through my job, I get to host an educational support group every week on the inpatient unit for newly injured, new spinal cord injuries, and I bring in peer mentors from our United Spinal chapter, and just hearing what they've gone through, what they've overcome, what they have to deal with. I've been lucky in a lot of areas post-spinal cord injury, and just kind of hearing those stories just kind of keeps me motivated to stay involved, stay as a chapter leader, and keep advocating for our community.
All right, Kevin.
I would agree with what John said. Just my faith and getting closer with God. Also the community. Everybody pushes me, my family, so I would say that right there.
Awesome. Eileen?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's my family. They've made a lot of sacrifices to keep this body going. and they continue to be with me day by day. So I'm really grateful. From my siblings to my parents, they have really trekked this long run with me. And just the opportunity to advocate. You know, for a while I was at home not really doing much because the UTIs were killing me. I didn't know if I was going to be comfortable out. And now that I have these catheters, I believe that I can help other people get them, and other people know that like there's options even though you live on a 4-hour schedule, or even though UTIs are a huge part of your life. So advocacy, the support system, and besides my family, you know, my friends, the people I've met at the rehab center that are consistently there for any question I have. And now Hollisters, I mean, anything we need, we call them first.
Awesome. Well, you all have been an inspiration. Thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. Let's give it up for our champions.